All right. Well, look, I'm super, super excited to be sitting here with one of my favorite people today, Andrew Smallwood. So thank you so much for flying in from Raleigh, North Carolina today to sit down with me on the podcast.
Absolutely excited to be here.
I famously, between you and I, think that we've known each other for 20 years. And you're quick to correct me that that is probably not the case, but mutual in feeling that. But I think we met around 2018. Is that correct?
That sounds right. But we've packed like 20 years of good times into just the past few years. So it's good.
It's amazing. So let's kind of start out with like, what are you doing today? What's your role? What company are you with? And what are you doing?
Sure. So I'm the chief strategy officer at a company called Second Nature. For people who aren't familiar with Second Nature is the industry's leading resident experience platform. And we power resident onboarding, resident benefits packages, renewals for property managers who work with long-term residential rental units. And we work with about 3,000 companies nationwide across the United States.
That is amazing. And so talk to me a little bit about how did you start with that company, Second Nature specifically, because I know that you did not come in as the CRO. Mm-hmm. So talk to me a little bit about kind of where you started with that company and what the progression looked like.
Sure. So I started with the company, back in February of 2017 in a sales role. And then went from sales to director of sales, started working with some of our enterprise clients. And so director of national accounts to VP of revenue, which is marketing and enterprise sales, plus starting some like partnership and product expansion at that point. And then as I grew into a chief customer officer and chief strategy officer, really what my focus is now is new innovation opportunities for the company. And so new product opportunities, new customer segments that we can go into and really looking at. I love talking to customers and working with customers every single week. And so what my typical week looks like is talking to customers, hearing what's happening in the market and seeing what are the kind of insights, right, we can continue to drive in the business to drive a high degree of innovation in the market. So that's a lot of what I'm focused on today.
That's amazing. And so you started out there in a sales role. And so talk a little bit, if you can, about how did you get started in sales, or what was your background, your kind of school, and then what was your first job out of school? How did you transition into the sales role, which is now turned into this, suite level executive role?
Sure. Yeah. Well, if we're going way back, my parents' names are Sally and Jeff.
That's great. I love starting at the beginning. So people ask me to start at the beginning. I'm like, well, I was born.
Yeah.
And
No, jokes aside. So I'll start from like a career standpoint. Had a bunch of jobs, obviously high school, coming into college, and then I had a job with Cutco knives, selling Cutco knives. Is how I paid my way through college. Did that a little bit afterwards. So that's how I got my first start in sales and then sales management. I was a director of development and communications for a charity called the Front Row Foundation. And so took some of the same relationship building skills, into that role. And then from there, I interviewed for the role at Filter Easy at the time, which rebranded to Second Nature. So that's kind of how I got my career started and how I ended up in prop tech and working with rental property managers.
That's awesome. You mentioned Front Row, and so I think it's interesting to talk to people about sometimes how do they give back to society. And I know a little bit about Front Row, but maybe you could kind of talk about that for a second and what that looked like, and really just when it comes to giving back to the community, how do you look at that, and where do you place that value in your life?
Well, yeah, a couple things there. So sometimes the way I like to introduce Front Row Foundation to people, and like we both share a passion for music and live events. And so I kind of like half know maybe the answer to this question as I asked you. So it's an easy question to ask, but Scott, if you could say like bucket list, you could be front row at your dream live event. What would that be for you?
Well, it's going to be fish. So
I had a feeling maybe at Dick's.
I think it would be fish. It's probably the Grateful Dead, but that's not really an option these days.
In 2026, I guess they're doing some sphere things and things of that nature, but not what it once was. But and you've been, I'm sure, amazing seats at a number of fish concerts, and if like me, you've also been, in section 314 at one point, right? It's a different feeling, right? Being in the back row versus in the front row. The energy, the immersion, the excitement. And the founder of the charity, my friend John Vroman, the story he tells, he's at a Jason Mraz concert and he's in the back row and he sees, these girls down in the front row just having an amazing time, right, at Jason Mraz. And what he realized was there's nothing stopping me from throwing my hands up and having a great time right back here in the back row, so to speak. And no matter what seat you're given in life, you can always choose to have a front row experience. And so he did that, and it was infectious. The people around him were getting into it, et cetera. And I appreciated that because, sometimes in life, you get bad news. And for Front Row Foundation's recipients, these are people who are battling life-threatening critical health challenges. And so when you get bad news, and I grew up in a medical household. My dad was a doctor, his dad was a doctor, and so on. And mom's stepdad was a doctor, and she's always been involved in nonprofit and healthcare. And so I still invest a portion of my time and a portion of my money into medical research and things like that. I think that's a great cause. But many times when a family gets bad news and the medical community can't show up and give good news in that scenario, the question is, as a community, what do you do for those people, right? And I think Front Row Foundation is really the answer to that question of, hey, we can show up and say, hey, what life is really about. What I think it is the memorable and meaningful experiences, right, that we have. And how can we create incredible moments, right, for ourselves and for others? And so that's really what Front Row is all about, is taking people to their dream live event. But that experience can often change how they live out the rest of their lives, the rest of their moments. And I just really connected with that. And taking people to the events, seeing that kind of like transformative moment happen, staying in touch with a number of them well beyond their day in the front row was a really powerful experience for me. And so the charity's just always had my heart. It makes me think about my identity as one of like being a moment maker. And that's actually in our core values at Second Nature, in the company of being a moment maker, whether we're interacting with clients or partners or whoever it might be, how can we show up to that moment and create a front row type of moment experience for that person with how we're interacting with them? And so that's kind of been a thread through me, my career, and pulled a lot of my passions together.
Yeah, it's so interesting to me, just the tie-in with the live music aspect of that and kind of the giving back aspect of that, and then how you transition that into your thought process in your current role with your current company. Mm-hmm. I think Second Nature, what I've always really loved. I mean, we met through Second Nature at an event, and I think we met in Las Vegas or somewhere around there, around that time. Mm-hmm. And I had actually just started going to some of these national conventions at the time when we met. But one of the things that, Second Nature is famous for kind of doing is that kind of client relationship and really putting on I guess over the top is the right way to say it. But I've also had the benefit of seeing some of your internal team events that you do also. So the customer experience is over the top, but also the experience that you create for the employees that work for you is also over the top. So maybe you can talk a little bit about that and just kind of how you apply kind of a sales mentality, but like building relationships through these experiences, and then the team aspect of having those same kind of heightened experiences to be successful.
Yeah. So a couple things that makes me think about. One is I think trust and relationships are more important than they've ever been. At least I believe that to be true. And when I think about what builds trust and relationships, it's when you have an experience that exceeds your expectations, right? That builds trust. And so the experiences I've had with you over time, right, have built a lot of trust, just like, the great reputation you guys have with your clients, right? That's earned moment after moment after moment, experience after experience after experience. And so I think a lot of times when we're going through life, when we're doing business, it's like you get caught in the routine, and there's an opportunity in every moment to choose normal, to kind of choose status quo, to choose whatever the opposite of over the top is. and there's also a choice in those moments to say, not what's the least we could do, but what's the most we could do. What would be over the top? What would be radically generous? What would be stop somebody in their tracks and make this a meaningful, memorable moment? And so that was true in a spirit that was very alive in the charity. That's a spirit and something that's very alive in Second Nature. It's something when I think about what I want the message of my life to be, that captures it pretty well. I'd want people to say, the way Andrew showed up for me, for others, he was radically generous. He was a moment maker. And yeah, the way that manifests is picking people up and from the airport in an exotic car that they've never been in before, that makes you want to pull out your phone and be like, this is cool, this is special. It's about renting out Harry Potter World in Orlando and no lines and everything else.
So cool.
It is fun. And, and when we first started, we couldn't afford to do all those things, right? But every time that we're showing up, we keep asking, how can a better version of us, right, show up? How can we be creative and innovative? Because purchasing an exotic car is very expensive, right? But like renting one for the day is doable, right? And I think it comes through where it's not about flattery and it's not about image or impressing from that kind of end of thing. And it's really, our customers can feel the sincere care that we feel for them and that how special they are to us. And that expression of that sincere care shows up in a lot of fun and creative ways, because that's just kind of our group and how we roll. And so, yeah, I think that's a very special thing about the culture at Second Nature that's pretty unique.
Yeah, I mean, I would agree. Some of the experiences that we've had together have been amazing. And I always found it interesting. I think I was I tend to be skeptical on the front end of any relationship, right? And especially back, when we first met. And so, it's kind of like, I'm always like, what's this person's like real intention here? Like, what is it that they're trying to gain from this or gain from the relationship with me? And what I always found really interesting with you, and as I got to know you more, was I never felt like you were, we started out as a client-customer relationship. and still have a client customer relationship to some degree today. But I mean, you're certainly my friend first.
Mm-hmm.
But how would you, what was truly unique about you at the beginning is I never felt like you were trying to sell me anything.
Mm.
And I think that that's something that a lot of salespeople miss the mark on. And so maybe you could kind of talk just a little bit about like your thought process behind like dealing with customers, and understanding that they're going to put up objections and they're going to do the things that customers do, but just like overcoming that and working on the relationship part versus the kind of sales, I've got a number to hit and a quota to meet.
Yeah, I really like this because and it's a part of the reason, like when you told me about what you're doing with the show, I was just like, I'm in. Yeah, like I'll get on a plane next week and let's do it. One, because like anything you're doing, I'd want to support you. But like, what I think is cool about what you're talking about is when we first met, I think it was in Orlando, NARPM or something like that. We had an interaction. It was mostly social. You learned about what the company did for 2 minutes, right? A typical trade show booth interaction. But after that, it was a more personal conversation. And then as I came to Memphis a couple of times over time, I remember buying lunch for you and a handful of other folks with Elwood's and
Elwood Shack. Yeah.
Yeah. And so before we ever did business, there was this period in process of, getting to know each other, right? And getting comfortable with each other. And just learning what was important to you, what challenges were you up against. And I don't even remember all the specifics, but I remember the way it felt was you had other priorities and challenges that weren't really a match day one for what we were doing. And so I didn't feel like it was the right time or context to say, we should focus the conversation on this. And so, yeah, I wanted to take that opportunity to get to know you better. And I think a lot of times salespeople, they have a job to do. And a lot of this comes from sales management and how people are quoted and the pressure that gets put on, hey, you got to produce this number. And so people naturally think, well, what do I have to do to go produce that number? Well, I got to go talk to people about my stuff, right? And I just got to talk to enough people about my stuff. And if I talk to them about my stuff enough times, eventually they're going to buy it. And it's kind of just like me. And like, here's my goal, my number, my agenda, everything else. And the counterintuitive thing that I think happens is when people get focused on, okay, like who are my customers? What are the challenges they're up against? What are the big opportunities, right, that they're trying to pursue? How can I better understand that first and foremost? How can I add value to this relationship? Maybe I can make a connection, right? Second Nature's business is all about improving the resident experience and driving ancillary income through a whole new level of service, right? You're providing your customer. Well, that's great if that's what is a problem somebody wants to solve or an opportunity they want to pursue. If somebody's saying, Andrew, I've got my first 4 units at Collaborate Real Estate Group, which, at one point everyone's got to start there. Maybe ancillary income and ancillary services isn't the priority. Maybe getting from like 4 units to 40 is the most important thing. And so the way I could be most helpful is how can I introduce you to new investor clients? How can I help you get connected, right, to people who might be interested in helping you get there? Maybe it's just encouragement, right? It could be any one of those things. And I think if you're showing up that way, it's great. And then there's going to be a point in time where it makes sense and things are a match. And that's the right time to have a more direct conversation at that point. So yeah, maybe I'll wrap with the primary context of our relationship when we started was business. That has shifted. And I see it more as, yes, we happen to do business again. That's all come back around. But, I view the primary context of our relationship as we're friends. And I think when you show up to conversations and you're building rapport and getting to know somebody, when there's a context of trust, great things can happen in business, and the relationship can flourish in that way, and that's great. I think so many salespeople, it's like if you think about objections, which you said earlier, a lot of times an objection comes up because you're pushing somebody to do something they aren't ready to do, or they don't already understand what the right answer is. You're moving too fast, is often what that is a symptom of. And so people throw up an objection because they're not comfortable and they're not ready to move forward. And so I think part of that comes from, if you have great rapport, great relationships, great trust, that'll happen a lot less, right? And then two, you just got to learn what's the decision process and really understand from the seat of your customer what they're trying to do, how they're thinking about things, and help guide them through that decision process, not push them through that decision process. And it'll just feel a lot more natural. And even though it can feel slower a little bit for people who want results and are eager to get results, a lot of times you could find yourself actually moving much faster if you go that way.
Yeah, it was really refreshing to see someone take that approach in a world where there's kind of this kind of overbearing sales process where, you're getting LinkedIn messages and emails and phone calls and trying to kind of move the needle. And I found it interesting too, and also refreshing, that one of the things that you've done continuously since we've met is try to help. And I think that comes back to what I'm trying to accomplish with this show. And the premise of taking someone to lunch is giving something before you expect something in return. And so it's just really just interesting to hear about that process and the fact that you focus so much on the relationship building first. And then how do you help somebody, even if they don't, at the end of the day, it's the product for whatever reason is not a right fit. They're just not in the right place, but still putting yourself in a position to be helpful for that person, to be a resource for that person. I find that very commendable and something that you do great.
Yeah. I mean, right now, if somebody's still here listening to this, right, I would bet there's somewhere between email number 17 and 54 of the day that, is asking them for their time, or asking them for their money, like asking them for something. They've probably gotten a handful of phone calls, and I'm even getting text messages now from random numbers, right? LinkedIn messages, right? People are constantly saturated with people they don't know reaching out and asking, right, for something, right, from them. And I think the more you can say, hey, when I show up and I'm making this first impression with somebody, how can I show them that I've taken the time to get to know them, right? Or how can I first take the time to get to know them, to understand what is the highest value conversation and relationship I can build, right, with this person first and foremost. And that's what I love about what you're doing here, because, when you take someone to lunch or lunch is on you, it's that first bid of, I'm not coming with an ask, I'm coming with a give, and see where it goes from there. And man, that one thing, that one little idea that you're evangelizing with what you're doing with the show, can be transformational, I think, for a lot of people.
Yeah, I hope so. I hope people get a lot of value from watching this, and I know they will, especially after hearing you talk about all these amazing things. I'm curious, so you're now the CRO of a large company. What is a moment maybe that you can go back to in your career where maybe it was a low spot in your career, or maybe it was a point at which you thought maybe this isn't going to work out? Maybe you can take us there and just maybe talk a little bit about it, and more importantly, how you overcame that in order to get to where you are now.
Yeah. Well, there's not just one low point.
I've had many throughout my career, so you're not alone with that. Yeah.
Well, yeah, I think that is probably true of a lot of people's stories. That there's peaks and valleys over time. And so when I think about a moment where I was in the valley, so to speak, probably probably the first one that comes to mind was when I was before Second Nature, running my own sales office. And I'd done well and had a good amount of success up to that point, and was really doubling down on the business and investing into the business. And then those bets didn't pan out the way that I thought they would. And so financially, I remember going from, seeing as a younger guy in his early 20s, $40K in his checking account to, negative 15 on some credit cards, and some took a big step back. And in that moment, just feeling like, whew, anybody who's felt the weight of financially, being in the red, personally, and the weight of, making payroll, right, and paying and employing all those people, and the commitments and the promises I'd made to them, right, following through on that, it can feel heavy. And I eventually got through that and was able to take care of everyone and get out to the other side of that, so to speak. And I'd love to tell you it was like, okay, and then it was 200K, a month later. That's not exactly how that went, but I was able to get to a good and solid place from there. And what I call back on in that experience is, hey, no matter where I'm at, I can always make the right next decision to move forward in the right direction. And it gives me a lot of confidence when things feel like they're heading down, that I can hold on to the stick, so to speak, and get things going in the right direction again. It also taught me, as somebody who's not a founder, but a lot of people will say, like, are you like a co-founder of Second Nature? Like, it feels that way to them because I think I respect what that role's like and being in that position so much. And obviously Thad's one of my best friends, but really treating the business with that kind of attitude of understanding, what it really takes, right, to win and succeed, I think has brought more of a level of how do we get creative problem solving and not just like wait to do something because I'm told to, right, so to speak, but like how can we get out there and really push things forward and win? And I'd say Second Nature is now at a point where we're kind of past any, I shouldn't say any survival risk, and I guess with AI and stuff, I'm sure there's change ahead of us that if we record this, it might seem, like hubris, and we never want to let confidence replace, learning. But what I mean is we've really gotten past that point of intense survival risk. And it's really about innovating and growing and scaling the business, which is a fun place to be. But I still cherish those moments, where things were tough, because it focuses you and it really pushes you to bring out your best in those moments.
Yeah, I mean, I think people tend to see someone at the top and not realize all the struggles and the years of hard work and everything they've put into it, and sleepless nights and all of that gets you to that kind of place where you start to feel successful and you have some success in life. So it's always great to hear people's kind of journey through that. We've talked a little bit about music in the Front Row Foundation. We've talked a little bit about your current career in Second Nature and what led you to that. One of the things that we have a great connection on is food.
Mm-hmm.
So curious to find out from you, what is one of your most memorable food experiences that you and I have had in our years of being food nerds and going out?
Okay. There's a lot of good food stories with Scott King.
We have had some epic meals. Yes.
Yeah, and a lot of fun travels and a lot of fun places that also kind of like centered around food. Probably the way I'll answer this question, I'll cheat so I can like almost get like 2 in here.
I like it.
And I think about, the first kind of like over the top, to use your words, dinner that I remember with you. And if this wasn't the first one, you can correct me. But I remember in Miami, we went to Bazaar Meat, which is a Jose Andrés restaurant, and had a very memorable meal there. And I say Jose Andrés and Bazaar Meat because later, I think you went to Bazaar Meats maybe for the first time, told me about it, and I'm like, we got to go back there. And I think we've gone back twice since. And what's memorable to me about those meals is a couple things. I think anytime you're with Scott and Lisa and like, a good group of people, it's going to be a good meal. But Jose is somebody who's like a hero for me because he's, what he's done with One World Kitchen. He's a humanitarian, and what he's really done to impact people, but also tying all of those competencies and those skills to what his businesses do and his flourishing businesses that he's built and the level at which they perform. And yet, he's doing it across multiple locations and people is really impressive. And so I try to go out of my way to like find a Jose Andrés restaurant if I can, and see what it's about and support it and bring people along and tell them about here's who Jose is, like what he's about, and try to get them as hooked and obsessed with it as I am. But man, Bazaar Meat and the multiple courses we had there was like so cool. And then Bazaar Meats and all the amazing, when they bring you a certificate out,
the wagyu, the A5 wagyu certificate.
And the falafel, I think it was.
Yeah, that's right.
The foie gras. I know. We're going to seem very down to earth.
That's right.
Talking about this, but I love, like, to me, it's not about the expense of the meal. It's really about, or like how much it costs or the exclusivity. It's about people who have like committed to mastering their craft and doing something the absolute best it can be done, and that they're capable of. And when you experience that as a customer, I find that like very inspiring to go. Like, I wish I could say I eat at Jose Andrés type restaurants 365 nights a year. I don't. But periodically going and having an experience like that, it really motivates me to kind of reconnect with how I'm showing up at work and how can I inspire myself and the people around me to be masters of our craft, to deliver excellence, to go over the top, and do that in our own way, in our own arena. And so, yeah, I think those meals probably come to mind as memorable and kind of connects to that story for me.
Yeah, that's so awesome. Jose Andrés is definitely a reoccurring theme in my eating out. So, Jose, feel free to come on the show.
We got to have him on at some point.
We got to have you on, man. We got to have you on. I really appreciate what, we talked a lot about like building the relationship and just our years of friendship at this point. And it was just so amazing to me when I picked up the phone to ask you to do this. It was like zero hesitation to yes, and how do we make it work and how do we align our schedules to, and I mean, like you said, you flew in here this morning and you're flying out tonight to go, deal with some other business stuff. And so I just want you to know how grateful I am. And I thank you so much for your time and taking the time to come onto the show today and give us some knowledge and a lot of your background. So thank you so much for that.
Yeah, well, listen, anybody who knows Scott King really well would know why it was easy and no hesitation to say yes. But I know there's a lot of people who are getting acquainted with you or learning about you, through this. And I just want to give them every encouragement to keep leaning in, keep learning. Scott is a great person to be around, and this was a pleasure. Yeah.
Thanks so much, man. I really appreciate it. Thank you for your time.
You bet.